I always kind of have a bit of like an imposter syndrome mentality to these things because, yes, now we're bigger. We've got, nearly 30 employees and we're working with 50 plus clients and all that kind of stuff. But it always still feels like George and I are kind of winging it a little bit at times. And I think always having that kind of founder, agile-led mindset is going to help at every stage of an agency's growth.
Welcome to the DesignRush podcast. I'm your host, Bianca Mayer. And today we're chatting with Andy Villers, co-founder of Favoured, a top digital marketing agency behind brands like Durex and Teapigs. In this episode, we dive into how Favoured scaled up, seized key opportunities, and why agility drives their success.
It's all about capitalizing on those luck moments and making sure that you focus on not losing the positives that you had. So for us, as we've grown, we've really focused on sort of the more boring side. How can we optimize our processes? How can we make sure we maintain growth, all that kind of stuff, as well as thinking agile and sort of not being too bogged down in doing things the way you think you're meant to do them.
Andy's focus on improving processes and seizing opportunities fits with 2024's business trends, where agility is key to success. Companies that regularly adjust and fine-tune their operations tend to do better than their competitors. In fact, research shows that process optimization can lead to a 30% cost reduction and greater flexibility.
I think being open to realizing that you shouldn't put all of your eggs in the Meta basket or the Google basket, because being able to quickly jump and be agile on potential new emerging platforms is really important. So I think the agility side of recognizing change is a key part of potentially building your revenue streams.
Andy's advice to diversify platforms is further backed by 2024 trends, with more businesses using emerging platforms like TikTok to reach new audiences. Companies that adopted TikTok early saw 25% faster growth in acquiring customers compared to those relying only on Meta and Google.
Having a reputation of delivering good work will mean that people will be prepared to recommend you, because ultimately if they make a recommendation, it's almost their reputation on the line as well. So it's really important that you work hard, you deliver great executions, and you build trust in people, because that will help you sort of follow their career trajectory and move into the right places.
Andy's focus on reputation and trust building is supported by data. 78% of business leaders rely on personal referrals to land high-profile clients, while 75% of consumers trust companies with positive peer feedback. Consistent, high-quality work builds this trust, leading to long-term growth and loyalty. Stay tuned until the end of the episode, where Andy shares his top predictions for future growth in digital marketing. And don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with all of our future episodes on the DesignRush podcast. Let's get into it. Andy, a very warm welcome to the DesignRush podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today and making the time. I really appreciate it.
No problem at all. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Okay, so Andy, we're going to jump right in. Okay, so first thing that I want to ask you is, how did you go about co-founding Favoured, and what really were the key steps that you took to really scale into a successful agency that you guys are now?
So, as I'm sure most agency owners have a similar thing, it's kind of like a long and winding journey. It started primarily though, and one of the most important things that happened in the birth of Favoured was me meeting my co-founder, George, essentially. And George and I have been friends for ages. We met on the first day of uni. We both did music. He had a bass on his back. I had a guitar, and I was like, I've got to go and chat to this guy. And we did. And, through uni, we were in bands together, all that kind of stuff. And then after uni, we all had to go and get jobs. We all had to do normal things. And we sort of took a different path. So George took a marketing path and I took a creative path, essentially. And what was kind of nice about that is we both achieved different bits of experience that ultimately contributed to what Favoured is today. I went on a path of production, so I worked in TV and then I worked in advertising, production, all that kind of stuff. And George went and did true marketing. So he went and did Ticketmaster, Live Nation, and then ultimately ended at Apple, which has really helped us. George got experience in marketing, and essentially after a long sort of stretch in TV and advertising, I went and became a freelancer. So I was freelance video editing, freelance sort of creative production in TV mainly, and sort of I had the desire to do things a little bigger. Eventually, I was hamstrung by my own limitations of time that I could put into projects. And I basically created a small little creative studio, me and a few guys that I employed to do sort of branding and video executions, all that kind of stuff. And at the same time, George went consultant side from Apple. And it was about that sort of time that George and I sort of came back together a little bit. And whenever he needed creative execution for some of the clients that he was working on, he came to me. Whenever I had clients who weren't quite nailing it on the marketing execution, I went to him. And ultimately, we sort of sat down one day and we went, well, it makes sense for us just to work together, basically. We're friends. We've been doing this for a long time. We need each other's skills. And then Favoured was born, essentially. But, you say, what does it took to scale it into a successful agency? I don't think you ever feel like it's successful. I think there's milestones on the way, but you I always kind of have a bit of like an imposter syndrome mentality to these things because, yes, now we're bigger. We've got, nearly 30 employees and we're working with 50 plus clients and all that kind of stuff. But it always still feels like George and I are kind of winging it a little bit at times. And that's not to say that we are truly winging it. I think over the years we've developed great processes and all that kind of stuff. But sometimes, I think each founder should never leave this mentality, but sometimes you still have to have the same mindset that you had back in the days when you're sort of grinding, trying to get your first few clients as you do when you've scaled an agency a little bit more. And I think always having that kind of founder, agile-led mindset is going to help at every stage of an agency's growth. But in terms of our growth trajectory, I think, a growth trajectory is hard work, maybe sometimes mixed with a little bit of luck. We sort of scaled and shrank as lots of agencies do. You go through peaks and troughs. But I think for us, the sort of thing that helped us at a point that was pivotal in our sort of growth trajectory was probably COVID, which was interesting. We shifted from ultimately sort of an office-based agency. We had an office in Leeds where I moved to an office in London where George was, to more of a remote focus. And because, our niches are in performance marketing, at that time, a lot of particularly e-commerce companies were sort of putting more focus on their digital marketing. And we had a bit of explosive growth, which was great. And that certainly helped us going forward. But it's all about capitalizing on those luck moments and making sure that you focus on not losing the positives that you had. So for us, as we've grown, we've really focused on sort of the more boring side. How can we optimize our processes? How can we make sure we maintain growth, all that kind of stuff, as well as thinking agile and sort of not being too bogged down in doing things the way you think you're meant to do them. So I don't know if that answers the question, but it's kind of our growth journey.
It does answer it, because at the end of the day, I think there were a lot of businesses that were, of course, affected by COVID and stuff like that. But I do know that the e-commerce industry was absolutely booming. So yes, for you saying that was actually a bit of luck for you guys, being able to do branding or marketing for these types of e-commerce websites, which are now huge. I mean, they were quite big, but I think since COVID, it just absolutely boomed. Everything, work from home, e-commerce stuff, like that stuff was really, really, it changed the world that we're living in now. So it makes sense that you did really well during that time.
Absolutely.
Now, I do want to know as well, like, at what point did you really feel like Favoured was truly, truly established in the markets? And, what were the indicators that told you that you had an agency that reached that milestone?
So again, back to the imposter syndrome thing. Sure. A little bit. It's sort of sometimes I sit down with George and the team and I have to go, hey, we're a real agency. And I kind of laugh because I still have the mindset that we're me and George and a couple of freelancers trying to wing it a bit. But actually, now that we have scaled, we have grown, there are indicators that do remind me that we're a real agency. People trust with their media spend and all that kind of stuff. So it's it's interesting. The indicators have been little breadcrumbs along the way. There's little moments early on where you find it a little easier to win clients. Maybe you've got a wealth of case studies behind you, and people start to trust you a little bit more. You don't have to do as much convincing, and then there's a moment where you don't have to do as much outreach. People start to come to you, and word of mouth starts to spread. You get a few more referrals, all that kind of stuff. And I think each of those add to the feeling that we're becoming established in the market. We've got a couple of niches as an agency, which we can talk about in a bit, but one of them is quite app specific. And I think that's definitely been helped by the fact that George is ex-Apple and all that kind of stuff. But for us, like, the feeling of being established in the market does seem to, one of the things in that niche is we seem to be one of the agencies that people go to when they need an indication of, how can they leverage marketing in their app growth journey. And it seems like we're now on the list of the 4 or 5 agencies that app founders go to, which is nice. Yeah. It feels good. It's also helpful from a new business perspective.
Of course,
But it is that kind of awareness in the market of Favoured that I think, for me, does feel like it's established. It's kind of the feeling that when you go and speak to someone, they may have heard of Favoured before, or if not, they'll go on our case studies page and they'll see companies that we've worked with, and it kind of legitimizes the whole thing in people's mind and builds that trust factor. So definitely, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, even when I was doing research and checking out your websites and everything, when I went to go check out some of the clients that you worked with, like Durex and Teapigs and all of these really big brands, that's impressive as hell. I think that definitely makes you an established agency at this point for sure, Andy. So I don't think you have to have too much imposter syndrome. I think you're definitely there, Okay. So again, just let's talk about your experience now a little bit, Andy. I know that you have a ton of experience in industries like fintech and SaaS and, all of these types of things that you tap into. Now, what I want to know is, how do you identify and tap into specific market opportunities for Favoured?
I think there's a couple of considerations when trying to target a niche. One is what our previous experience sort of lends itself to. So very early on in the Favoured journey, again, because kind of George's ex-Apple credentials, we became quite app focused. It was a niche that we could talk about quite easily, and there weren't many app specialist agencies out there at the time. And as such, we built a team around the requirements of that niche. So in app marketing, it's not just getting an install. It's not quite as linear a journey as maybe an e-com marketing campaign where you get a click, they go to a landing page, they add it to the basket, and they check out. For an app campaign, you need a team structured around acquiring a user and then retaining a user. So for us, it was building that sort of full funnel capability. And I think because we started to structure a team around the needs of app marketing, it naturally became a niche of ours. And we had that little lift of some previous experience being able to sometimes get us in a room we might not have been able to get into for a new business chat, basically. But then as we've sort of grown, we've started to look at those capabilities and realize that it doesn't just have to be related to app marketing. The sort of full funnel piece can be e-com, it can be B2B, it can be any kind of niche out there. And as long as you execute it properly, it can be very helpful for any marketing campaign. But ultimately, the niches that we go to are generally dictated by kind of the experiences we have in team, but also how much the team enjoys working on particular clients. I know, for example, our team really enjoy working on direct-to-consumer campaigns, be that app or e-com. And that's where their sort of creativity shines, and I can see them getting more excited about the proposition and all that kind of stuff. That's not to say they don't smash it out of the park when we do B2B stuff, but it definitely helps when I know the team is behind and engaged in the kind of clients that we're winning, and it sort of plays into their strengths as well. So I do believe that it's a combination of things, skill sets, but also how much the team love working on those particular things. That will push you down certain paths, I think.
Absolutely. It makes such a huge difference for sure. But speaking of clients, actually, Andy, I do want to find out, particularly for Favoured, What is your strategy for landing big name clients like Durex and Teapigs? Are there, say 4 things that smaller agencies can do today to compete for such high profile clients?
Yeah, I think there are. Again, to go back to sort of the growth journey, there's elements of hard work that you put in, and then there's also elements of not luck, but good chance elements. So ultimately, the chance elements are kind of built out of the hard work that you put in. So, for example, Teapigs, a recent larger client we won, that was from a sort of someone we'd worked with previously, moved into their marketing team. They'd previously had a great experience with us as an agency, and then naturally they recommended us to sort of work on a marketing project that they had there, which turned into a larger scope of work. So I think that's not an element of chance. That's an element of us doing a great job on another execution, having someone be our advocate or champion, and then them bringing us into a new company that they moved into. So I think making sure that you're always doing a good job is key. That sounds like such a simple thing, but having a reputation of delivering good work will mean that people will be prepared to recommend you, because ultimately if they make a recommendation, it's almost their reputation on the line as well. So it's really important that you work hard, you deliver great executions, and you build trust in people, because that will help you sort of follow their career trajectory and move into the right places. Then there are other things. I think ultimately having a level of being established in the industry certainly helps with conversations around larger brands. We've been going since 2017. It did feel like there was a time maybe 2 or 3 years ago where we turned from being a new upstart agency to something that felt a little more established. And I think that comes with time, right? It's not like you're going to start an agency tomorrow and you're going to win a massive FMCG brand. It's sort of unlikely, unless you're offering something niche, which then kind of goes into my maybe third or fourth point, whichever this is. But I think when you're trying to approach bigger brands, it's about realizing where you fit in their entire marketing matrix. We are a full service performance marketing agency, but it's not like I'm going to Durex and going, can we do all of your digital marketing, please? Because ultimately they're such a large company. They'll have many different agencies handling different elements of their marketing executions and all that kind of stuff. So you have to see where the opportunity is, and you have to see where you can fit. So for Durex, we helped them launch their first TikTok campaigns. We jumped on TikTok quite early. We sort of saw an opportunity to get ahead on an emerging platform, and ultimately that got us in the door. So we were coming to them with an interesting proposition that none of their current agencies had really thought about or could handle at that time. And we got that tiny little piece of the pie to try and do an execution for them, which otherwise we wouldn't really have got a look in. So I think it's also about spotting the right niche opportunities in the larger makeup of those companies' marketing requirements.
Exactly. I want to ask though, just to follow up to that, how exactly did you identify that that's what Durex needed, and you then went and pitched it to them? Tell me, what was that process like?
You know what? That was another bit of one of those chance things. It was we had done some TikTok executions, and obviously we'd done some case studies on the website, all that kind of stuff. It was quite early on in sort of people understanding how the paid part of TikTok fed into the overall marketing mix in terms of channel selection and media budgets and stuff. We must have ranked for some SEO things. Actually, I was just looking at our Google Search Console today about ranking keywords, and TikTok for us seems to be one of the key non-brand driving keywords, which is interesting. Okay. So at the time, one of the marketing managers at Durex actually reached out to us. So it was an inbound inquiry, and he was like, hey, we're looking to maybe test TikTok for a few conversion focused campaigns. Can you help? I'm sure he reached out to maybe 5 or 10 agencies. It's not that he picked one agency and that was his one horse in the running. I'm sure he had multiple conversations, but that little bit of chance aligned with our previous experience, and the two things married together to make that piece of work happen. And I think it is chance combined with the hard work that you put into get you on people's radar, I think.
Absolutely. Love that. Okay, so just another thing about, clients agency relationships. What to you, Andy, are the 5 most important factors to establish and maintain a long-term client relationship with, say, Durex or Teapigs or any of the other companies that you've worked for now?
I think ultimately every client relationship will at some point come down to performance, right? So no matter how much a client might like you personally or the team personally, if an agency isn't delivering on what a client requires for their level of spend or not achieving the KPIs they're looking for, it makes it very difficult for a client agency relationship to be sustainable. So firstly, you've got to try and nail the execution. You've got to put in the work, and as an agency, you're only as good as the performance you're delivering. So that's one of our fundamental drivers. The performance has to be good. We have to be hitting their KPIs. And if we're not, we're doing everything we can to try and achieve what that client needs, be it extra creative production or bringing new ideas to the table in terms of channel mix, all that kind of stuff. So beyond that, it's all the things that make an agency enjoyable and easy to work with. On our team, we're a very client-facing agency. So we do have account managers, but it's not like the account managers are the gatekeepers to the whole agency for the client, and they're the only people they speak to. For us, it's really important to be collaborative with the client, to have a really open relationship with the entire team where they can speak to the creative department or the UGC content creators or directly to the media buyers to understand performance, all that kind of stuff. And I think that makes us feel like an extension of an in-house team, which is kind of nice because then it feels like a collaborative effort. It feels like a team coming together to achieve something. But ultimately, it's also important to take stress off your point of contact within your client's shoulders. We're here to deliver performance, but also do it with the team to take elements of requirements off that marketing manager or off the founder if we're working with a startup and all that kind of stuff. So making their life a bit easier is really important. And then finally, I think it's about really understanding the impact that you're having. So this loops back to the first one. You have to deliver performance, but to deliver performance, you have to deeply understand what you're trying to do and then how what you're doing is having an impact on you getting there. So we drum sort of an understanding of data quite deeply into all of the employees at Favoured, from not just the people dealing with the campaigns like the media buyers, but also the account managers need to have a really clear understanding so they can help strategically in guiding campaigns in the right direction. The creative team have to have an understanding of performance so that they can understand what's going to generate a better click-through rate or video hook and hold rate or whatever. So having a deep level understanding of what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how what you're doing is having a tangible impact will then help your conversations with the client to be able to go, all right, we didn't quite hit the sales target this month, but this is why, this is how we're going to action changes to get there, and this is why you can feel comfortable that we've got it under control. Because they need to trust you, and they can trust in your understanding. Ultimately, I think it's really important to be completely on top of the numbers.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's really great advice, honestly. Just going back a little bit to how you all started at Favoured and all of that, I want to know, Andy, what is your advice to other smaller creative agencies to, grow now? The things that they can do today, like 3 pieces of advice that they can do today to really help them set up and build and start from a really solid foundation as an agency.
I'm sure there's a million different pieces of advice that different people will take as important based on their own experiences. For me personally, having a co-founder was instrumental, I believe, to the growth of Favoured, because it wasn't then a solo task. I imagine being a solo founder or a solo kind of person at the top of your own company can be quite lonely, maybe. I've been very lucky to have someone who is completely aligned with, or we're completely aligned with each other's goals, that we can each focus on the areas of growth that we can influence. So, you know, we've naturally split into, George is fantastic at new business. He's great at talking to people. He's great at selling what we do as an agency. And I've naturally shifted more into sort of account director and looking at internal operations and processes to improve things we do as an agency. So having someone you completely trust to bounce ideas off and focus on growth has been really, really helpful for, I believe, me and George personally. I know not everyone is in that situation, so it's kind of impossible to say whether someone can go out and find the perfect co-founder. I was just very lucky to do that. In terms of other pieces of advice, I think always having an agile mindset, and no matter what stage of growth you're at. You know, we've recently had the big AI boom, and it's, for us as an agency, really important to understand how that fits into our workload. How does it change the way we do things? And I think if you don't move with the times, you're very quickly potentially forgotten or overtaken by someone who's willing to adopt a new piece of technology or think about something differently. You know, if I go back to the case of Durex, we were jumping on TikTok early. It opened a door, which one of their current agencies couldn't open for them, and therefore, even though their current agency, who might have been handling meta advertising, could have expanded their scope of work, they missed out because they hadn't adopted that particular platform early enough. So I think by being open to change, being open to be agile and sort of focus on potential new opportunities early, it could really improve your chances of success. And then finally, I think it's about working with good people. Beyond George as a co-founder, we have, I believe, really fostered a strong team, because the team are people that I like personally and trust entirely to do the bits of their work that it's going to help everyone. I think a team mentality is really, really important. From my time working at JWT, for example, you know, in the large ad agencies, I didn't particularly like the ethos of the large ad agencies, because it always felt like a kind of blame game. You know, I'd moved into advertising from broadcast TV. In broadcast TV, you've got one team and you're just trying to make the best bit of TV possible. So everyone works together to achieve a fantastic end result. When I moved into JWT, it was more about, well, something's gone wrong here. It's not, let's all come together and fix it. It's, the account managers don't want the blame, so they'll blame the production team, who'll then blame the creatives for having a bad idea, who'll blame the media planners for giving them a wrong brief, and no one really wanted to be left holding the hot potato. So I think having a team you can trust, and then who can also take accountability for any mistakes they've made, so that you can come together to fix problems, is really important. I think being able to rely on people is really important. You can only do that with people that you believe are good at their job and you believe you can trust. Which is one final thing. I think it's easy when you're growing an agency very early on, when you take that leap to start employing people, to go, I'm just going to hire a bunch of juniors because they're cheaper. Sometimes that's not the way. I think finding the right people, you also need to find the right people at the right skill levels for the elements you need at that time. And don't be afraid to hire more senior people, because it may actually free up more of your time to think about growth, because you can trust them to do their job. That's not to say you shouldn't be also looking for fantastic juniors, because there are people out there at the beginning of their careers who are brilliant, and we've hired a few and they've grown with us, and that can be really helpful as well. But don't be afraid to hire at different levels of seniority at the right points in your journey.
Absolutely. I really love that. And what I think really resonates with me the most of what you said is like choosing the people that you work with really well, especially people that can take accountability. So basically people with character, right? It's not maybe as quickly that you can catch that. Maybe there's certain questions you can ask them in interviews or something that might tell you what their character is. But yeah, people with character and integrity definitely make a huge difference to a team, for sure.
I agree completely.
Yeah, 100%.
And you know, being a remote agency now,
Yeah.
it's not as easy to get sometimes the vibe of people. You know, it's not like I'm sitting next to them every day in an office and we've got the office stereo on. I can see who likes what music, and you go for a drink after work and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We do get together a lot as a team because I do believe FaceTime is important. But
Sure.
being remote does sometimes throw up more of a difficulty in sometimes understanding people's vibe. And, you know, that's kind of one of the struggles with being remote. But also, I see it as an opportunity, because then for us, I don't need to hire the best people in the location of where an office is. I can find the right vibe of people wherever they are. And actually, I find you find the right mindset of a person who can work well in a remote setting, because they are often self-starters. They are often self-motivated, and they can manage their own workloads because there's no one breathing down their neck like there is in an office. It's not like they're visible at their desk 9 till 5 kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think finding the right people to work remotely actually plays into finding the right people in general, because it is a good mindset that can work well in a remote setting.
I wonder, Andy, what do you think are the 3 next biggest opportunities for agencies to grow in revenue in the coming years, like this year, next year, and so forth?
It's really interesting. I feel like we're at kind of like the birth of the next era. That sounds so like cliche, but you know, I mentioned it earlier, AI, right? It is kind of a bit Wild West at the moment, because it hasn't truly found its place in how it's going to shape the future of the internet and how people interact with things and all that kind of stuff. But also, Pandora's box has been opened and it's not getting closed, and I don't think it's going away. So I do believe that there is an opportunity right now for people to understand how to use AI in the right context of how it is going to shape marketing going forward. I do think, like, agencies who are just going, no, it's not for us, I'm not going to touch it, it writes bad copy, or the images are weird, or whatever. I just think they're not opening their mind to how it could be used, or using the right prompts, or exploring alternative ways in which it can help their workflow and all that kind of stuff. Like, so I think potentially AI, I know it's a buzzword, but it is a huge opportunity for agencies at all levels to potentially harness it for growth. So I think that's potentially a good one. Always keeping an eye on emerging platforms, I think, is really, really important. You know, yes, there are the big players, but 5 years ago, TikTok wasn't a thing, and now TikTok's a thing, and actually it's eating up a lot of the media budgets, and it's now usually part of our initial media plan. So I think being open to realizing that you shouldn't put all of your eggs in the Meta basket or the Google basket, because being able to quickly jump and be agile on potential new emerging platforms is really important. So I think the agility side of recognizing change is a key part of potentially building your revenue streams. And then third one, don't know, finding the right niches, I think. You know, for us, structuring a team around app-specific stuff has been great, and it's been fantastic for growth, because we've become now a go-to app-specific marketing agency. Great, fantastic. Right. That was only because we kind of spotted that little niche and built a team around it, and did that, and had George's Apple experience to help open a few doors and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, not being afraid to try and go for a niche, making sure that you kind of aren't too scared to limit yourself or try and position yourself as a niche specific agency. It's at some point it's helpful. Early stage startups might go, well, I don't want to limit my potential for billing by going, I only work with apps or whatever. I just think it's about framing it in the right way, potentially.
Absolutely. Now, a follow-up to that then, Andy, is what is Favoured's agency growth strategy for the next 5 years? Do you have anything planned? What are the goals that you want to hit? I mean, how are you adapting to industry changes like AI and stuff like that? So I want to know what's up next for you.
What's next? Just keep growing. Hopefully, that would be nice. No, I mean, growth would be nice, right? But it's not, for me. Growth isn't like it's not a vanity thing. It doesn't matter how big the team is or how many people you can say you've got working for you or anything like that. Ultimately, it's still got to be about delivering good work. Otherwise, if you start to erode the quality by just focusing on growth, then it's not going to help you in the long run. So for us, it is always about how can we improve the ways that we work? How can we improve what we do at Favoured to, one of our key metrics of success is client retention. The longer we can successfully retain clients, the more we can grow, because new business keeps happening on the side and you grow your billings like that, which is great. But every time I see an uptick in retention means that I know the team are doing something right to improve what we're doing going forward. So it's always going to be about looking inwardly in that growth journey to try and focus on the good bits, fix the bad bits, and then scale up from there. In terms of like overall growth though, I think we are getting to a stage where the doors are slightly opening with larger companies a bit easier, which is fantastic. We did do a period of doing a lot of events. Whether I think that is going to pay off, I don't know, because they're not super cheap, but they do get you out there. I think that's more of a long-term strategy. And just I think keep growing our client base. Also, I think for us it is going to be about maybe a shift also to kind of landing elements of bigger clients and then expanding our work scope with them. So, getting a portion of a large client's marketing mix, demonstrating that we can deliver effectively and do a really, really good job, build trust, and then try and say that we can do more potentially. Amazing. So I think that's going to be one of our main focuses going forward.
Fantastic. Okay, so Andy, I just have one more question for you. And this is something that I ask basically all of my guests now. So if we had to flip the script, right? For you as an agency owner, right? What are the biggest things that clients or potential businesses need to be on the lookout for when agency hunting? Like what are the things they need to be mindful of the most during that process?
It's a great question. And actually, whenever I have sales calls or speak to potential new clients, the one thing I often hear is, I've been burned by an agency before. And that kind of frustrates me because it gives all agencies a bad name. Like whenever a client has a bad experience with an agency, not only probably does it cost them financially, but it also costs them in time and effort and all the kind of sweat that they have to put in to make an agency relationship work. And if it doesn't work and they get a bad experience from that, then often they are put off using agencies for a long time, which is unhelpful for the rest of us. So I think it really is important when choosing an agency to not buy into hype. Always be pragmatic around an agency decision and don't be swayed about the promise of performance, because no agency can ever truly promise anything. Like if an agency goes, I promise you we're going to get a ROAS of 10 and your cost per purchase is going to go down by 50%, then those should ring alarm bells. If they can tell you, I think we're going to make significant impact to your campaigns because I've looked at the data, I think you could improve your creative. Currently you're getting a click-through rate of 0.5%. That's well below the industry average. I think if we utilized UGC and we could triple your click-through rate, that means we can decrease your cost per purchase by X. Great. Listen to sense and kind of not even, if not data backed, then strategy backed insights into how they are going to achieve your goals. But if they're promising you the world, if it sounds too good to be true, often it is. I think also making sure that you vibe as a client, not just with the person that is trying to sell you the service, but also maybe potentially wanting to meet some of the other people that you will be working with on a daily basis. Often if you're speaking to an agency founder, they're not the person that you're going to be dealing with on your client day to day. You probably will be dealing with maybe an account manager, and it'd be nice to maybe meet the people that you will be dealing with on a more regular basis and see how you vibe with them, try and understand their skill levels and expertise. And ultimately, I do think finding an agency that aligns with your goals wholly is important. We charge retainer based fees rather than percentage of media spend, and I think it's quite easy to be lured into a percentage of media spend engagement with an agency. But you do also have to understand that if an agency is remunerated off the amount of money you're spending, it's in their interest to spend as much of your money as quickly as possible. So that's not a sustainable approach to scaling your marketing efforts, I would say, if they just want to spend as much money as possible. So do look at how they structure their financial agreements and see whether it aligns with what you believe is a long-term vision of success.
Absolutely. Okay. Andy, that is fantastic advice. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today. Thank you so much. Really, I appreciate it.
No problem at all. Thank you very much for having me on.
And that's a wrap on our conversation with Andy Villers. Whether you're looking to grow your agency or understand how brands make their choices, the DesignRush podcast has you covered. Subscribe now for exclusive tips, expert interviews, and actionable insights that will take your agency to the next level.